we are coming to you not quite live, especially by the time this thing goes up, but we're going to be on the YouTubes. Yay! For that's right, wave and smile. For Accademia Giallo, our new monthly series, newish. This is like episode 4, I think, of us talking about the Italian cinema of suspense and danger and people in black garb stalking folks. Lots of mysteries involved. So it's a little bit different today because we're talking about all the colors of the dark. Yes, I love that you're wearing the shirt. And then,
had to.
I love that you're wearing a shirt, period.
I mean, for YouTube, I can,
I know. Glad you opted for the clothed version.
Are you wearing all the colors of the dark official underwear, though? Please, don't answer that. Please.
I mean, the answer is yes. Of course it is.
This is Giallo, so we gotta,
Oh, so are you? Is your underwear yellow? Is that what you understand?
That's what he's saying.
Oh boy. Okay, so full disclosure, this was not one of my favorite giallos that we've watched, and I watched it a week ago, so some of it's kind of hazy. Were it not for the notes that I took, it would all just be kind of a melange, a kaleidoscope of imagery, which is thematically appropriate. I do know that similar to The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wart, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, this one stars the lovely and amazing Edwige Fenech and George Hilton, former co-stars, coming back for another go-round. This is another very strange kind of relationship movie. Edwige plays a woman who was in a car accident and lost her baby and is now feels like she's being stalked, assaulted. There's all sorts of strangeness going on. She's having bad dreams and visions. So her friend says, the psychiatrist isn't working. How about a cult? And things just get weirder and weirder from there. So let's dive into it. What was y'all's first experience with all the colors of the dark, and where does this rank in your personal estimations of giallo? Whether ones we've talked about so far or ones that we have yet to discuss. Brian.
Oh,
wait, what?
Because to me, this is like the Brady Bunch, and AC is like right over.
I like how you're signaling. It's like, no.
Like
I'm the one who brought up the underwear, so blame me. But yeah, I for the audio version of this,
you're actually down here for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if I go like this,
there you go. Ow! Hey, now.
This is the wrong kind of school.
Call me Sunshine first. So, I mean, the debate is also whether this is actually a giallo, period. I mean, I think an argument could be made that it's not technically a giallo. There is a mystery, certainly. But I've always kind of dubbed this one "Rosemary's Baby" dunked in marinara sauce. I mean, it's very much, you got the same, and there's no way that Martino wasn't, aping some of Polanski's film. There's too many similarities for it to be accidental. Which is not to say I think they're both terrific films, and I think this one holds up in a kind of crazy nightmarish way, but it's certainly atypical of the giallos we've seen so far, where there is a mass killer and we don't know who it is, and the mystery is about who is that killer. So would you like to talk to that, Brian?
Well, to answer Ian's original question, so I explained how I came across this film, like a couple episodes back or whatever, and even on my own show, where I happened upon it when I was 8 years old. My uncle was watching like a Spanish dub of this film on VHS, and like now that we're all collectors of these movies, and I think back, I was like, I don't know how he got his hands on like this film in particular, but he did. And I ended up walking in, and he was like, hey, you know, like in his broken English, Spanish or whatever, you know, come on the couch and watch this like crazy movie with me or whatever. And I did. And it was like beginning. So it had that whole nightmare like scene or whatever. And then, you know, Jane wakes up and it's Edwige Fenech in all her glory, taking a shower in her nightie and all that. So it's like there's so much imagery that's been locked and seared into my psyche. And you know, I don't know if I need therapy or whatever, but like this was my opening to everything Italian, like Italian horror, Italian giallo. At the time, you don't know what it is. So to speak to you, AC, I would say that this is definite. I would say this is definite giallo for me. For me, giallo is more of an aesthetic. It's more of like a flavor. Like I think I talked about this a couple times, where it's more of a feeling when you're watching the film. Yes, it does have like a lot of satanic stuff, like Rosemary's Baby specifically. You know, but I think the feverish dream aspect about it is what makes it, you know, have a lot of giallo elements, as well as a lot of like sort of paranormal elements with Jane. I don't. Are we gonna like get into spoilers?
Yes.
Yeah?
We're gonna talk about it. This is school. You know, we're educating
right.
each other. It's the Accademia.
So I would say if you haven't seen the film yet, run out, get the Severin Blu-ray, because it's like the best possible edition of this film out there. I mean, I think it's available on Shudder as well, but it's like I looked it up. It's on YouTube for $1.99. So
now I want to put an asterisk next to that, because that's how I watched this.
Okay.
And
the YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
The YouTube one?
I rented it. I didn't watch it in parts. I actually plopped down money to watch it. And other Gialli that we've watched have been Italian films with English dubbing. This was an Italian language movie with English subtitles. There was no other option. Is that the way that you watched it, or was there dubbing on yours?
I believe the Severin has dubbed. I mean, you have two options, but I'm pretty sure I watched the dubbed version.
I watched both of them for the show. So.
The English language version.
Wow. Now, because that's the thing is
there any difference, Brian?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say the feel of it, like it's probably one of the worst dubbed films I've ever seen of these films. You know what I mean? So it doesn't.
That's saying something.
Well, yeah, like I love it anyway. I don't care. You know, for me, it takes on a whole new character when you watch, like, you know, some of these bad dubs or whatever. But for this one,
sometimes they do an Italian language version and then they shoot it again in English. Like the actors were versed in both languages, and they would shoot one scene and then they would do it again in English. Right. I wasn't sure if that was the case on this one or if it's just a dub.
What's crazy about this one is, like, if you go and research this, there's not a lot of information regarding like the making of it, the behind the scenes of it, like all that stuff. It's just like, it's kind of out there and it's for people to speculate on or whatever, you know? But having said that, like, I would say, so you watched the Italian version, right, Ian?
With English subtitles, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I think the tone is just different. Like for me anyway, watching both of them sort of back to back, the dub one kind of makes me laugh a lot more, whereas this one is more like, you know, like the English subtitle one is more like you get the real tone of it, I would say, you know. But that's just, I think it's a preference thing.
You know, and I'm curious to watch the dubbed version because, as I mentioned, it's unusual for me to watch one of these films with the subtitles on because I'm always listening to the English dubbing. And I think that, particularly in this case, where it's such strange, out there, surreal imagery, when I have to stop, and this is going to sound so terrible because I love foreign film. I have no problem with subtitles, but for some reason, watching this movie, stopping to read the dialogue at the bottom, it just took something away from the totally immersive experience. So I think if I were to watch it again with the subtitles or watch it again with the English dubbing, I think I'd be able to get into it a bit more.
So, Ian, if you really cared, you just learn Italian.
Right. I mean, this is an
wait, hold
Italian
on.
school.
Pasta fagioli.
I'll get you Babelfish for Christmas, and you'll be good to go.
No, I know. Hold on. Bottomless breadstick. Everything I learned.
That's true.
From
You know
Garden.
what? Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Awesome.
but I will say, Ian, to that point, the film is like full. I mean, I'll say it's one of my favorites, but it's full of so many plot holes. So I would say it probably doesn't make that much of a difference if you were to check out the dub version.
Well, okay, let's talk about that, because it's such a strange movie that I probably didn't understand it after having watched it once. How many times have you seen it in your life since you were indoctrinated / traumatized / mesmerized at 8 years old up to the present day?
God, it's up there, because it's, you know, like when you learn what it is after you initially watch it as like a kid, you know, like you're like, oh, what's this movie that fascinates me or whatever. So I remember owning a VHS of it. I remember owning a DVD of it, and then there's a Shameless Blu-ray that came out a few years back, and then there's also the Seven one, which I think is the best version of it yet. So like, you know, like amongst all those releases, I've seen it countless times. I mean, so for me, it's like I kind of make my own connections here and there, or whatever. And you know, when Ernesto Gastaldi first wrote this, I'm not sure, like, if he was really meaning to write like a cohesive narrative, or if he was just like, let me just put all this shit into this movie, like from these like other American films or whatever. And then my brother, or not, I'm sorry, like I get these confused because Sergio Martino's brother, I think he's a producer of the film, and he ended up hooking up with Edwige Fenech. So he always like gets in my psyche, because I'm like, God, that lucky, you know, guy. But I'm not sure if the writers of this film were very like, hey, let's make this like a straight narrative or whatever, and then let's, you know, have Sergio take care of like, you know, the flavor of it or whatever, you know. So
Yeah, I don't know. I guess when you say there are plot holes, I don't know exactly what they would be, because to me the plot is just this kind of melange of stuff that's thrown together. Like you're saying, maybe it's not meant to be, you know, something that's taken literally. It's more of a figurative piece.
right.
It's just
Right.
so,
And that's how I took it when I watched it.
and it's just so strange. Maybe it's just for me, because I'm thinking with the Giallo that we've watched, they tend to be plot and character driven in a way that you constantly feel like it's a mystery that's building to something. Whereas in this one, I'm like, okay, now we've just got this crazy, weird sex cult that looks like something that's should have been on film 10 years earlier. It's very psychedelic, very 1960s. The guy with the crazy long fingernails, this badly drawn tattoo of the third eye, like all this stuff. And I just don't know what exactly it adds up to. You've got the killer with the fierce blue eyes who keeps showing up, and he's part of the cult. And then there's one of the people who sacrificed themselves. Her daughter is the best friend, I think. I don't know if it makes sense. I just don't know exactly what it adds up to. It's sort of a mood piece. It's fine, but and honestly, I'm going to say this, and it just sounds really strange. I may have talked about this before, but this is one of those films where there is so much sex that I, at one point, just wished Edwige Fenech would put some clothes on.
8-year-old Brian does not agree with you. 8-year-old Brian's like, get him out of here. Don't listen to him.
43-year-old Ian is
What are you
slapping
talking
myself
about?
in the face right now.
I don't understand this language that you're talking about.
What do you say that? What do you mean? No, I mean, I want to kind of come back to what you were saying, Brian, like the notion of, because I think we were talking about Blood and Black Lace when we talked about like a giallo is something that's hard to describe or define. It's harder to describe or hard to define, but you're able to kind of like pick up on the elements of it. And I don't know that this, like, I don't attribute that fever dream feel to the giallo, I do assign it to like Italian horror in general. I mean, a lot of like Fulci stuff has that, you know, fever dream quality where like it's really logic is thrown out the window and it becomes just about the pure cinema, the impact of the imagery and the sound. And I feel like this one kind of falls more into that camp as opposed to being a mystery in the way that the other gialli that we've seen thus far, certainly in this series, and I think what is primarily identified as gialli would be characterized by. Like this one, this, like I say, Rosemary's Baby is not, if we're going to say the giallo is kind of like the Italian godfather of the slasher movie, you know, like Rosemary's Baby doesn't really fit as that. And these, I mean, it's clearly, this film was clearly influenced by Rosemary's Baby. And so I'm kind of like, well, how does it fit with, so I guess that's my question to you is like, how does it fit within the giallo subgenre for you? And I guess I would ask for a little more of a definition as to what defines the giallo for you.
Well, I mean, like when you say fever dream, I like harken back to, you know, the earlier, like, you know, Lizard in a Woman's Skin, for example, from Fulci. Yep. I think there's a lot of stuff in there where it's like you feel like you're dropped off in like this crazy, weird, nightmarish dream or whatever. And I don't know, like for me, like in my head, like there's a specific line where it's like Italian and it's just like this by-through line or whatever that just goes through everything. And then like, I would say like on the top of that is like giallo for me. And then, you know, everything sort of falls into place. You know, like when I look at demons, for example, and I realize I'm mentioning demons again.
Take a shot, everybody.
This is part of the show. You know,
not a giallo. Not a giallo.
No, but it's got a lot of that like flavor to it. It's got,
well, that's what I mean. I mean, like, but we would never call demons a giallo, right, even though it has that kind of insane quality.
But I think this one is more of a giallo. Like in, you know, obviously you walk into any circle, people will be like, oh, well, that's not a giallo, and this is a giallo, you know. Right. But like for me,
what makes it for you?
For me, it's more giallo with like, you know, supernatural stuff going on, you know, whereas like if you watch Suspiria, for me it's more of a, you know, supernatural Italian horror film with some giallo elements. When you watch Phenomena, it's more, to me it's more of a giallo with the supernatural. So it's like I don't know, I hate classifying stuff anyway, you know. But like I don't, like I'm sort of hard to press to, like, you know, is it because Jane is being stalked by Ivan Razumov's character throughout the whole thing? Is it because it's you know, it's an inheritance blackmail plot thing? You know, is that, you know, that's what the Satanists are after or whatever, you know? So when it comes to that kind of thing, like, you know, it's not necessarily a straight, you know, because when you watch Rosemary's Baby, that's a straight like cult satanic film, you know, like at the end of the movie, Satan shows up and, you know, like gives her a child of the damned or whatever. But like with this one, it's more, the motives are very money oriented, you know, like they just want to get their hands on the inheritance or whatever. So like for me, there's a lot of these giallo films that incorporate that kind of like money scheme thing going on, you know. So for me, like if you want to like pin it down, you know, this is a giallo, like I would say that attributes to it being a giallo. The whole subplot of like, this is what they're after. It's not necessarily they're after Jane's soul, you know, so I don't make it really a supernatural film. Because it's so like black and white in that sense, with like all these weird like hallucinatory, is this really going on kind of thing, that sort of speaks to that fever dream kind of thing going on, you know. So yeah, I would say because of the inheritance plot, like it makes this fall into giallo territory with some supernatural elements.
Dr. Martinez, you have successfully defended your thesis. Congratulations.
Cool.
No, I
was getting a little nervous, you know.
No, it's, you know, I do love the way that you walked through that. because I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I feel like this movie, I expected it to be in the vein of the Gialli that we've watched before, but it's got this kind of a window dressing of being more of an occult,
Right.
you know, almost like, yeah, like a Suspiria kind of thing with this weird imagery, and you know, the boundaries of reality and fantasy are kind of blurred. And then at the end, you're kind of left with, oh, it was just, yes, it was a Giallo plot, but there's almost a misdirect of it's also a supernatural thriller. It's not. It's just the people who were involved in the plot believed that they were, you know, doing supernatural things.
Right.
And the victim, Jane, believed that she was the victim of supernatural dealings through, you know, the weird group sex and the visions that she went to the shrink for and that kind of a thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's almost like initially when you started talking, I was thinking, yes, this is a movie that thinks it's a giallo, but then by the time you get to the end, it's just a supernatural plot, but it's actually this kind of a scam. Now, one of the things, and again, this might just be because I was a first timer with it, the inheritance plot didn't even really register with me. I did not understand the resolution of this movie, really. I thought it was more about revenge or something. Like at the end, is Jane's husband, I mean, after the blue-eyed guy is taking a nosedive off the roof, and they're kind of consoling each other, and it ends almost like on this eerie note. What has happened to her? Was he on it the whole time? I'm confused, because she had like this premonition that he had died, and I don't know, there's like dogs' heads being chopped off. I don't know what's going on with this movie. Explain it to me. Help me out. I need a cheat sheet, Teach.
I would say like that this is one of the reasons why I wanted this to sort of be the next film, because I think if you're looking at this with the perspective of just like a traditional horror fan, you're probably not really going to like this. But through the lens of like this Giallo sort of school that we're going through or whatever, and you've seen some of these films already, so you kind of know the style, and you know like when, for example, like it's almost like I feel like it's an extra credit film. Like if we're gonna like, you know, pin it down to like the school thing or whatever, because there are red herrings in this particular film. There's a lot of these, you know, spot the J and B thing or whatever. There's like a lot of the actors that you'll see in a lot of these films. This is like a blockbuster cast of like Giallo actors, like who's who of Giallo actors. So it's like, it's very steeped in the Giallo without actually being like a true blue, you know, like stereotypical Giallo or whatever. I wouldn't put this in the same, like, if we're rating Gialli, I wouldn't put this like in the same like category as what we last watched, which was Strange Vice with Mrs. Ward. You know, this is more of
The last one we watched was Bay of Blood.
I'm sorry, because Edwige Fenech does this to my head, so you know. But no, like it's like there's a lot going on that you do think there's you almost like when you see George Hilton's character Richard meet with her sister. It's like, do they have something going on? Are they like scheming something behind her back or whatever? Are they, you know, he's like a pharmacist or he sells pharmaceuticals or whatever. So it's like, are they drugging her on purpose because, you know, filling her head with all these crazy dreams or whatever? So there's so many things that are getting thrown at you, and you're thinking to yourself, well, where the hell is the inheritance plot? Like, where did I miss that? You know? But it's there. Like, what's his face? Luciano Pigozzi. He shows up as the lawyer, and you know, like so. There's a lot of exposition without being exposition, if you get what I'm saying. Like, there should be a moment where like they're on top of the roof and they're like, oh my god, like they were after my inheritance plot all this time, and my lawyer told me, you know, like there should be that, but for whatever reason, like, you know, they didn't bother to write any of it. It's almost like this is just dropped off. And for me, it's like, it's gotten to the point now where it's like, I just get, you know, like I fall asleep to this film. Like, it's just beautiful to watch. I love the score. Some of the actual actually a lot of the cinematography is just amazing. The way that, you know, certain scenes are shot. Like when she first gets up from her dream, she's upside down with the camera, and then like the camera kind of circles around her, and then, you know, she's right side up, and, you know, just like little tricks like that I just always love in any of these films, you know. So for me to like break it down, I don't know, man. Like I think there's so many characters that are thrown at you. There's so many side plots that are like never really, you know, picked up or whatever. Just sort of like, oh, like, you know, is this a red herring? You know, but they never really explore any of that stuff. I mean, it's a ludicrous. Like if you think about it, the neighbor Maria Malfatti, she plays. I'm sorry, yeah, Marina Malfatti. She plays Mary. She's the neighbor, and she's recommending, oh, let's go to this black mass to like cure you. You know, like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think you just go into it with that frame of mind, and then just hold on, and you know, eventually end up on a rooftop somewhere.
Yeah, the neighbor, I made a note. She reminded me, she looked like a cross between Morgan Fairchild and Virginia Madsen. And I think one of the coolest shots of this movie happens early on. And I'm trying to figure out, because it struck me as something that I hadn't really seen before. And it's probably been done in other films, but there's a scene where Richard has left the apartment. Jane looks out at him, you know, down on him. He's in the street. She's watching him. And then she sees him looking at Mary, who's like at an apartment, like kind of diagonal to her, but down below. So it's like this three-way, you know, intense eyes watching each other suspiciously. I just thought that was really cool. And I guess that is something that I do admire about the film is, you know, it doesn't have a lot of the big murderous set pieces that we've seen punctuating some of these other movies. So that's another way that it's kind of sets itself apart. But it does have some nice, cool camera angles. I was completely freaked out by that opening dream sequence, by the way. The kaleidoscopic stuff, the triptych of, it was a naked pregnant woman, you know, whatever happened to baby Jane, like this weird, like fright baby doll figure, and then a mother screaming, and then Edwige Fenech wakes up, and I was relieved because there's this great motif where Martino was putting me in her position, where I didn't know what I was looking at. I just wanted to stop, and then mercifully wakes up, and she's freaked out and I'm freaked out. So, you know, big points there.
Yeah.
AC, where do you fall on the baby doll thing?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great, shocking, disturbing. It's almost like what's the word? Where it's like a weird caricature, you know. And what I was actually going to flip to is the end, though. Like on the rooftop, those lines of dialogue, they feel completely inserted into the film. It feels like the movie actually, and you never see their mouths moving. They're turned away from the camera. And it really does feel like one of those things that they kind of threw in at the end just to give it a little extra zing. And it's one of the things I'm like, it would have been fine. I would have been totally fine with just, you know,
totally
like a fade out there. But it doesn't, again, I feel like that's how the film actually ended, was with just that final shot. And somebody somewhere said, well, we need to have them say something, you know, about, you know, maybe resolve it a little bit or give it a little bit more mystery to it. Because as I was watching it, that really struck me this time. I was like, what? That feels really kind of literally tacked on.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually multiple endings to this film. I think when it was originally released in Italy, I think they chopped off a lot of the ending, which I think they don't even do the second reveal. Like it's that first where one, you know, right before she wakes up in the hospital or whatever. I think that's where they end it.
Okay.
So it's just interesting that, you know, was this more for like American audiences, whereas like, you know, it's like I could totally see what you're saying though in terms of tacking on those lines, because like you,
and it's not the first time that we've seen that. I mean,
right.
I mean, I feel like there's certainly several Italian films and Spanish films where you're going to have that final shot. I feel like it wasn't like the Jose Larraz one that you reviewed. doesn't that end on a rooftop as well with like lines tacked on? Or it's like, I'm like, wait a minute, I feel like I've been here before.
Yeah. I will say, like, this is like,
Stigmata, that one.
Okay, yeah. Despite all that stuff, like I just, like I said, I keep going back to just the way that this film is shot. Like you can tell with some of, people sort of sometimes gravitate towards torso. Your vice is a locked room and only I have the key. What's the other one? Like some of the other Sergio Martino films as their favorites here and there. But I don't know, I think this is sort of like him playing around with visuals and then like maybe later like using that a little bit, with more balance with his visuals or whatever. But it's just it's so artful. Like it goes down as one of my favorite scores from Bruno Nicoli. It's just I think the entire package is great, but it is missing some of that, expositional stuff that would have made it more like, oh, okay, this is why this guy is doing this. It's not really super fleshed out that Ivan Razumov shows up as sort of, the murderer from the guy that killed Jane's mother. It's like, I feel like there is an amazing remake of this film sometime down the road, where they actually do flesh out a lot of these details. And I hesitate in saying that because I'm not a huge fan of remakes, but like this one would be perfect, to sort of pick up and make into something a little bit more like, like with the Suspiria remake, they sort of fleshed out a lot of the things that, Argento didn't care for or whatever. Like, I think this one's ripe for somebody to do that, but somebody could always say, well, this is ripping off Rosemary's Baby, so there's already a perfect film, like for that one or whatever. But I don't know, man, like when you just sit down and watch some of these films, this one is more like, oh my god, this is like fast food for me. This is like, you got all these amazing actors down the line, you have an amazing score, you have a beautifully shot film. Ivan Razumov with the contacts, like throughout the entire film, those crazy, like striking blue contacts. It's just a feast for the eyes and all the senses, like what I feel Giallo, like a good Giallo should be,
Now, I mean, it's funny because like a lot of the stuff you're mentioning, because Martino doesn't have kind of the same artiste reputation that say Fulci or Argento does. Where you really feel like you're getting a vision, like, and he kind of, I think Martino kind of gets the reputation as kind of a journeyman director. He kind of comes in, does the job. But I think you're right. I think he does some really kind of fun, stylish things here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was him kind of like aping Argento or if that was him, because I don't necessarily ever get the feeling like, oh, this is a Martino film. I get the sense of like, this is a well-constructed film, or this is a certainly competent is not meant to be an insult. It's like, this is really well done. It's polished, but I don't necessarily feel like I've got, Martino was like dying to do this movie and he had to get his vision on camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that he does use a lot of these actors in, some of these movies that we watch. The previous film, I want to say it's Case of the Scorpion's Tail that he did previous to this one. Or maybe there was a film in between there somewhere, but Edwige Fenech was supposed to be in that film.
Right.
But because she had a baby with his brother, she skipped that movie and now she's in this one. So it's almost like, back to what I said earlier about how Bava wanted to work with this one particular actress. So this movie kind of was birthed from that or whatever. It's almost like, hey, like you can almost see them in a room somewhere and Edwige is saying to, like, you know, her kid's uncle, hey, so what do you think is next for our next one or whatever? Hey, did you guys watch Rosemary's Baby? Why don't we do something like that and then make it more giallo? Or, you know, like, who knows? Like, it's all speculation. But
well, I was listening to the commentary with Kat Ellinger on this one, and they talk about how Martino and Fenech did several Italian sex comedies that don't get the same kind of buzz that the horror films do. I've not seen any of them, but apparently they did quite a number of those together. And that was actually, and they felt like that's actually, Ellinger says that, like, that's kind of like Fenech's milieu. She's like, she's so funny. She's so good in these sex comedies. Yeah.
I've seen some of them, and she's actually really good in those. Like, she actually, because, you know, like, horror and comedy, like, I think they get a bad rap, but there's, like, so much talent in these films. Like, it's so important to balance out the comedy and horror aspects of these films, you know.
I love the idea of Edwige Fenech in a sex comedy, so I gotta track those
Oh
down.
my god!
Possibly for our next series, going with the school theme, it's going to be called Sex Edwige.
Oh, geez.
I got so excited.
I was going to say, wow, that was like Andy Milligan all of a sudden.
Keep your hands where I can see them, sir.
Oh my God, that's funny.
I can't get over the fact that this is the movie that she made after she had a baby. I mean, like, talking about some bounce back. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's... I completely lost my train of thought. Okay. Going back to the Rosemary's Baby thing. Maybe one of the things I was picking up on is if the idea was, whether intentional or not, they wanted to do kind of a new version or a ripoff, whatever, an homage to Rosemary's Baby, but not have it be so obvious. I think one of the things about that movie is that you find out that everybody's sort of in on it. It's this big, you know, devil cult conspiracy. So they sort of go the other way and just say, okay, not everybody's in on it, but there's some people. But if you've got that movie in your mind, then you're going to be looking out for who's in on the conspiracy. And when it turns out they're not, they're like, well, what are they doing there? Were they just strange characters popping in and out, you know, being literal red herrings for you to go, maybe that's some of the plot holes you're talking about, Brian, is like, why was this guy giving her the side eye? You know, if they had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, were they literal red herrings?
What's Italian for red herring?
I'm just imagining like these little, like, wait, where did that red fish come from? Ian said we got to get these in here.
Well, I'm just looking for. I'm surprised you didn't pull out like some kind of one of your Giallo Mad Lib titles. I'm waiting for like red herring on the goldfinch porch or something like that. You know,
that is actually the next feature.
Oh, cool.
Well, there is the Red Queen kills 7 times, which also stars Marina Malfatti in that one. So,
are we talking about that one at some point?
Well, I'm sure we will. I mean, there's a whole list of these movies. You know?
In Brian's mind, we do all of them.
Yeah.
So the Red Queen kills 7 times.
Yes.
It's now. Is that metaphorical, or are there 7 deaths? Are there 6 deaths? And that's what makes it artistic.
Such a spoiler, I know.
Yeah. How long was the 100 Years' War? Sorry.
Who's buried in Grant's tomb?
No one. So I'm trying to think, because this can't be one of our shorter conversations. But you know, what else is there to examine in All the Colors of the Dark, aside from the fact that I couldn't get that Vanessa Williams song from Pocahontas out of my head? You know, I think I've got the lyrics pulled up right here. You can own the earth, and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with all the colors of the dark.
Wow. That's the first time I ever heard that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Nice.
I want someone to do the Vanessa Williams song, but with a montage of scenes from this movie.
Yeah. That would...
Can that be the opening credits for this podcast?
Probably not for copyright reasons. No.
Dang it.
Sorry.
I would say, if there's anything to add, like for me, the way that I take it now, like I think whenever Ivan Razumov shows up, I think his name is what, Mark in the movie. He's credited as Mark. But when he shows up, I think it's like if it gives you that like lasting effect of trauma. You know, that's like that she's almost having trouble discerning what's real and what's like, you know, her memories and her thoughts and her nightmares and all that stuff. So it's like when you think of everything that's happened to her, like we failed to mention actually that she had I guess a miscarriage with the baby after a car accident.
No,
She was
I
pregnant.
mentioned that. I mentioned that.
Oh, okay.
For the record. It's very important.
I'm
No.
an idiot.
Hang on, let me get the scorecard out. All right, there we go. Got it?
But yeah, so there's just been so much trauma in her life. So it's like when you look at some of these nightmares that she's having and this reoccurring character that's, you know, continuously stalking her throughout the movie. And then it's sort of like a self-trauma where she finds this black mass. It's almost like metaphors for like, you know, sort of taking care of your own traumas. And, you know, she's like, when you watch Fenech in this movie, she's very much the woman in peril throughout the entire film, you know. Whereas when you watch her in something else, it's almost like, you know, she's a little spunkier in Strange Vice. You know, she plays a villainess in another movie, and then yet in another movie she adds just like her own thing. Like, but in this movie she's constantly on the run. She's constantly, you know, a victim. You know, people are trying to take care of her. So I think it's very much like, to me, the way that I see it, it's like a commentary on trauma. It's a commentary that like it always makes you feel like you're the victim. You're always constantly being chased by this trauma, you know, because literally like she's had some awful shit happen to her, like in her personal life, you know. Now, would I think that a black mass will instantly help your sex life? Probably not. Like, it depends on what kind of sex life you're
Depends
into,
on who your neighbors are.
Right. I'm not trying to discriminate against people that, you know, perform black masses and whatnot. So let that be known. Hashtag, you know, black mass.
Here's a question. And again, I saw this movie a week ago, so maybe this happened, but I don't think it did. When she goes to the black mass and the guy with the crazy weird fingernails shows up, the cult leader, she doesn't giggle once. She's just so enthralled or freaked out by that she's just like, all right, let's get it on. I just expected like a little titter or something. I don't know. I don't care how charismatic this guy is or how much he thinks he's hypnotizing people. I just can't. I couldn't take him seriously at all.
Which is a problem with your villain.
Yeah.
I don't even consider him that's the other thing. I don't really consider him the villain of the piece. I mean, I know he is, but it's just between him and Mark, the guy with the blue eyes,
right,
constantly popping up, and sometimes they're together and sometimes they're apart. I just wasn't quite sure who the threat was. Maybe it's because even when the cult leader shows up wearing a suit or whatever later on, I'm like, you're still the crazy fingernailed hippie. I don't care about you. I can't get scared of that.
Yeah, I'm on that same bus with you, like in terms of like, you know, I've never, like, even when I was a kid watching this crazy movie, I never really found him like frightening. Like, if anything, that's sort of, I don't know if I should be, you know, admitting this, but it's sort of like sparked my interest in like, you know, ooh, like that looks kind of cool or whatever, you know. Although I will say, like, when they kill the dog or the fox or whatever it is in the film, like, it just looks like uncomfortably real. Like, you know, when he, I don't know, it just looks like they're actually hurting the animal when you're watching this. So
that was something that was, it was hard to watch, partially because I was so like right up on the screen trying to see how they were doing the trick. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it is very convincing. I think that and I don't know, you guys maybe have seen this in a making of or something, so correct me if I'm wrong. It looked like they actually used a dog, but then just like turned its head and angled the sleeve or whatever to make it look like the blood was draining out of its head.
Rumor has it that they used the real fox.
Was it a fox or a dog? Is that there's like a dog's head somewhere else in the movie? I thought they were all dogs, but
they used the real fox, and then like it's sort of like they cut it with, you know, a fox that's already been stuffed or whatever. You know what I mean? So they don't actually kill the animal on screen or whatever, but it's made to look that way. But again, it's like it's tough to research a lot of the info of this for this film, like, you know, on the interwebs or whatever. But I will say, like, one little interesting tidbit that I found on my notes here. AC, do you know where the castle, what other films that castle appeared in?
They did mention it in the commentary.
Yes.
But I didn't make notes, so I don't recall. Oh, wait, yes, I do. It's Legend of Hell House.
Yes, yeah. So,
yeah.
That's
which
super.
Which is a great movie. Have you seen that, Ian? Have you seen Legend of Hell House?
I have not.
Oh, it's a classic.
It's a terrific adaptation of Richard Matheson's Hell House, and it's got Roddy McDowall, Pamela Franklin, and it's a nice kind of counterpoint to The Haunting.
Okay.
Because Matheson, you know, like in The Haunting, you're not quite sure if it's all in her mind or if it's really happening. And Matheson was like, I want to do a haunted house movie where we know it's actually happening. And like there's real ghosts going on.
So let me ask you this, Doc, are you doing a scare-a-thon this year?
I will be doing a scare-a-thon this year, Ian. Thank you for asking.
Well, I know what we're going to be talking about.
I think that's a lovely one.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I'm
not meaning to exclude you, Brian. I think it'd be fun if we all talked about Haunting of Hell House.
Legend of Hell House.
Well, no, we'll
Haunting
combine
of Hill House. Yeah, exactly. We'll just do them all.
The Haunting of the Legend
of all the houses.
Yes, the Haunting of the Legend of Hell House.
The Black
on Haunted
Mass
Hill.
at the Hell House. Yeah.
With all the colors.
Oh my gosh! Now we're getting into scary movie territory.
Actually, speaking of the commentary, though, Kat Ellinger, who did the commentary for this, has a book called "All the Colors of Sergio Martino." So, in terms of folks, you know, who might say that it's really difficult to research this film, there are these books out there. I don't know if you've heard of these books. They're kind of cool.
I don't read, so
no. Well, yeah. If it's not on a screen. But yeah,
dude, when that book first came out, like when she had it, you know, like before it went, like I think it was available through Arrow or whatever, but she had her pre-sale link or whatever. I was like, boom, like ordered. That's like one of those things that you just know that you have to order.
Have you read Troy Howarth's?
Oh yeah, I got the.
I mean, because Troy Howarth has. So what are you saying? Like, there's no research on it.
But no, like if you
he doesn't write about it.
I mean, a lot of the, you know, this not necessarily the specifics of like the behind the scenes stuff or whatever, the making of it.
Gotcha.
You know, like because a lot of times like you'll see like, oh well, this one was, you know, filmed with this, and you know, like whatever. Like there's so much trivia on a lot of these movies. Sure. This one not so much. So
got it.
Yeah. I read, goddammit.
You just look at him. He's just like completely. He's all the colors of denial.
Nice. Couple of things I picked up on. Maybe we should write these down as far as Giallo motifs, or maybe these are just motifs in movies in general. But I noticed that in this film, as we've seen in other films, there's a trope of a husband being away on business while awful things are happening to the spouse. I also noticed the trope of the embrace between two people followed by the gunshot.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
You're picking up on those too. Yep.
Any other like little motifs that I may have missed that I should be writing down? I feel like we're gonna have a Giallo bingo by the time this is over.
That's the goal. That is the goal. But no, like I think another.
Well, every time you see Edwige Fenech, you have to drink. You know.
Which, I mean, technically, she's not in a lot of these movies. She's like in 3 or 4 or something like that.
But there is a lot of her in the movies.
Yes.
Judging by what we've seen so far.
Yeah. But no, that's one of the reasons why I chose this one, was because from here, it's like we can go anywhere. You know, we could hop on any of these, you know, co-stars and, you know, maybe branch out from there. You can literally go from here to strip nude to your killer. Strictly for Edwige Fenech, you know. Or you can go to your Vice is a locked room and only I have the key, because she played, you know, like, I don't want to give specifics or whatever, but her role is a lot meatier in that one, you know. So I don't know, there's like a whole slew you can do. We failed to even mention Neves Navarro, who plays who's also known as Susan Scott, right, who's in the Death Walks movies, you know. So there's just so many. You know, actually, Ivan Razumov is also in Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key with Edwige Fenech, you know. Or you can even do
or we can just listen to Brian play
The Case of the Bloody Iris is actually a really good one. And it's got Edwige and George in it, and I think that's the last time we see them together, like in a movie like this. So go anywhere, dude. Anywhere.
At first, I thought you were saying it was The Case of the Bloody Irish. It was going to be like some kind of political thriller. Those bloody Irish. No. Well, we'll talk. We've got some good ideas for what we're going to talk about next time, it sounds like. So, yeah, I this wasn't my favorite Giallo, although my estimation of it has gone up during our conversation, because I feel like I understand it a bit more. I definitely need to watch it again with the dubbing. A, so I can focus more on the visuals, and B, so I can hear some of this hilarious voice acting, apparently.
It's fun. It's entertaining.
All right. Well, speaking of entertaining, this has been a blast. Thank you guys for joining me on the YouTubes. And so before we go, I do want to give you the chance to plug yourselves. That sounded terrible, but I'll plug you. Fine. Wait, no, that sounds even worse.
No.
What are you doing? No, it's a delayed reaction because of the Zoom connection that keeps going out. No, so Brian, you host the Film Deviant podcast, the #1 on iTunes Film Deviant. I'm making that up. I'm manifesting for you.
It is. Of all the podcasts featuring Bryan Martinez, it is #1.
Excellent. So what do you have coming up on the show?
Right. I think the next episode I'm talking about a Stephen King movie, or a movie that's adapted from one of his books. And then after that, I have an episode with Xena, the real queen of horror. She's one of my favorites. Like back when I first started Film Deviant as a blog, I first met her 10 years ago, and now she's going to be on my show. And she's like a horror personality on her own. Like, she's got a lot of really cool projects. Like, she's a filmmaker. She's got her own thing. Like, she's an amazing person. So I'm excited to have her on. I'm excited to have AC on again. I'm excited to have you on at some point. Like, I'd love to have you on, you know?
Whenever.
But honestly, it's one of those things where it's like, do I feel like doing a podcast show tonight? Sure. Like, let me just talk about, dude, it's like, I don't have I will say, when I had that interview with Chaka Malik, that's when I was a bit more serious about all this. You know, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be interviewing like my own personal hero from when I was younger. And then like when that sort of fell through, it was like, well, you know, you just take these as they come, and, you know.
Yeah.
That's when you settle. That's when you settle for AC.
No, please.
That's when you like go, fine, just call that guy again.
Oh, so speaking of AC, that's you.
It is.
Aaron, the doctor. What's going on with Horror 101?
Gosh. I mean, Horror 101 is kind of the great platform where I've been hosting it for the past 10 years. But I think the fun stuff this year has been not necessarily horror related. There was June Claude Van Damme which was a little mini festival in June. And then that gave way to Sly in July, which was a dozen Stallone films. And then I think we're going to do a double shot of Kurt Russell, because I got Tombstone and Tango and a Cash coming up. So yeah, it's been more action than horror. I mean, there's still horror being watched. And then come October, it's all leading up to October. In October, I do my annual. This will be my 10th annual Scare-a-thon, and yeah, it's been very cool. And I've got a couple of. I'm still mulling over where the funds will be distributed this year, because it's been quite a year, and a lot of folks in need. So yeah, it's gonna. I'm still kind of determining where to direct the efforts, but the efforts will be made.
So it's Scare-a-thon 10. Are you going to do Scare-a-thon X and get like a metal hockey mask and everything to celebrate the occasion?
You know what? I'm a huge fan of that movie. I will defend Jason X to the death.
I will too.
That
like
movie's so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I haven't actually. I do need to kind of decide what my themes are going to be this year, because I've done werewolves, I've done Italian films, I've done. Last year I went through the Rec series from Spain. So yeah, not quite sure, but there is still time to make plans.
How about the Child's Play franchise?
I haven't seen the remake, and that could potentially spark a revisit, but I was never a huge fan of Chucky. Wasn't my bag.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate, I actually, when they screened it at the Music Box, and let's have a moment of silence for their having canceled the Music Box of Horrors this year.
No.
It'll be one of the first years I've missed it. I've been in town. But they did a screening of Child's Play 2 that I was like, oh God, do I really need to watch this again? And the programmer was, yes, you do, because you missed it the first time. You missed how awesome it is. And he was right. Revisiting Child's Play 2, I was like, this movie's awesome. This movie's so much more fun than I remembered. So I recommend people give it another spin.
The only thing I remember about that movie is I think it was Garrett Graham like falling down the stairs. Am I remembering that right?
Could be.
Yeah, and like making a really weird sound as he went. But
as he's wont to do.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for talking. Oh,
I just wanted.
I thought you were going to poke me again. I was getting ready.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to quickly mention. I don't know when this is coming out, but
Monday, next Monday or today.
I've been speaking with a gentleman by the name of Baron Martino, and we're looking to resurrect the Giallo Room again and get some new episodes out there. So hopefully people are super psyched about that.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, when are they coming out?
It's tough, like pinning this guy down to like do episodes or whatever. So maybe for Jalloween or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Is that original? Did you just make that up?
We did it actually a few years back.
Okay.
And then
so
like
that'd be a no.
Well, we did Jalloween, and then like another event happened in Europe around the same time. So I don't know if it was one of those things where it was like, hey, Jalloween, like people thought of it at the same time. I'm not saying I coined it, because I think some things were already out there or whatever, but we did one, 2017 or 2018 Jalloween. Or like we literally did a Giallo movie every day for October.
31 days of Giallo. It was good.
Yep.
That's beautiful. Well, we'll do 31 months of Giallo. How about that?
Yes.
You guys are locked in. On that note, again, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you.
This has been fun. And yeah, we'll talk again next month about something scary and yellow and dangerous.
Yes. I love you guys.
Love you too.
Adios.
Night.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.